Morning. Happy Thursday. My internet's a little spotty this morning. I'm not sure why, so I apologize in advance if this video gets a little weird. More weird than usual. So this week I wanted to talk about something, a question that I had to really seriously ask myself at a point in my life, and something that I think gets misconstrued. Hi, Donna. By a lot of people, which is the question, am I a binge eater? And what exactly is binge eating? I think a lot of the times we think about binge eating as, we think of somebody who is enormously overweight, who is lying on a couch with ice cream and chips and, just enormous amounts of food, stuffing themselves till they're in pain. And while yes, that is an extreme form of binge eating, there are so many other different ways in which we experience binge eating. So first of all, what is binge eating? Well, binge eating, as I describe it in my book, and as it's described in a lot of literature, is a compulsive drive to eat. A compulsive drive to eat when you're not hungry, and a desire to eat without any regard for your current state of fullness. And often you eat beyond fullness to the point of discomfort. But it's so much more than that. Binge eating is something has a lot of shame involved. It's something that you tend to do by yourself, in hiding, or when you think nobody's looking, because it's one of those things that you don't want to be doing, but it's a compulsive behavior, and it's something that you also really feel shame about. So it's, if you find that there are times where you are eating foods or quantities that you would be embarrassed to eat in front of friends or other people, then that is a form of binge eating. The other thing I would think of, the other thing that is very common in binge eating is that you feel very tightly wound and you have a lot of emotional distress leading up to, during, and after the experience of eating the food. So there's a feeling of like, I should not be doing this. I really can't believe I'm doing this. Why am I doing this? So there's like this, voice in your head that is against it, but then there's still this behavior that is happening completely out of your control, something that you feel powerless to stop. So again, it doesn't have to be that much food. You don't have to be eating to the point of disgusting fullness all the time. It's just sort of the thoughts that come with the behaviors. A lot of the times we use alcohol as a disinhibitor. So if you find that you have a not very healthy relationship with alcohol, that is another kind of binge behavior where maybe you feel like you have one drink and then that voice that tells you to stop at one has suddenly turned into the voice that's like, have two. And then the voice after two is, well, hey, I'm feeling good. Let's ramp it up, right? Let's have a third. And then not only that, but then alcohol as a disinhibitor sort of allows you to eat food freely, and allows you to kind of engage in this kind of binge behavior that you normally wouldn't. But it's almost like the alcohol is, it's almost like you know going into it that if you drink, you're then going to be able to say like, screw it, I'm just going to let loose and eat. So it's almost like you look forward to it in a kind of strange, twisted way. And also, binge eating is a type of eating that you tend to regret later or immediately or while you're even doing it. And the regret usually is followed by a vow to change, a vow to get back on track, a vow to shape up, a vow to finally change my behaviors forever and wake up and start fresh, and all of those sort of vows for renewal that come out of this self-loathing behavior. And, often it's this, again, because you feel powerless in the moment, you're like, I'm going to do this, only I'm going to do this after this food frenzy is over. So it's like you've given yourself permission to do it. Now, for my own experience with binge eating, I didn't realize, when looking back, my episodes of binge eating started when I was in high school, which is also when I started dieting. And, I remember having these moments of eating beyond fullness and just feeling like, well, I'm trying to watch what I eat and lose weight. And here I am eating out of control. And so I'm just, a failure at what I was trying to do. And there were often times where I would try to stick my finger down my throat and throw up, thinking I could become a purger, but then was also sort of like, well, I can't do that. I wasn't able to throw up. So I thought, well, there's another thing I'm a failure at. I can't even be successful at purging or bulimia. I'm just a failure at even that. So there's always this kind of accompanying feeling like what I'm doing is shameful, it's disappointing, and I'm a failure because I can't figure it out. So all of those emotions come with that. And again, it happens so often when we are chronic dieters that we don't even really pay attention to what is going on. We just sort of think, well, this is part of being a failure at dieting. It's so normalized. Dieting is so normalized. And the binge eating that comes with dieting is so shameful and so secret. A lot of us don't talk about it or even acknowledge the fact that it's going on in our lives. We just feel like we are dieters and then we're failures at dieters. And, we're still in this daily dieting cycle. We haven't really exited it. We're either just on the tracks or off the tracks. So I never really thought of myself as a binge eater until it became unavoidable. I mean, it got to the point when I was a Weight Watchers leader that I was doing this daily, nightly. Every night I was eating beyond fullness. I was feeling disgusted with myself. I felt completely powerless to stop. And I would wake up every morning vowing that today I was going to get back on track. I would eat very little food throughout the day, depriving myself physically, because I knew I was binge eating and having all of these calories at night. And so I was sort of feeling like I could compensate for all of the calories I was having by binge eating by restricting even more, not realizing that that was fueling this physical desire to binge eat at night. I didn't make that connection. I just thought, I'm just a big fat failure. And so when it got to the point that it was nightly, I really sort of had to face the fact that, okay, this is a compulsive disorder. This isn't just me being a failure at something. And I remember there was this one experience that I'll never forget. I was at a birthday party, one of my kids' birthday parties, and the mom at the party was cutting these like enormous pieces of cake, right? And I remember looking at the pieces of cake she was cutting and I was like, oh my God, those are so big, and like being really excited because usually as a grown-up, like you're supposed to have these tiny little slivers of your kid's cake. And they were so big, and she was handing them out to everybody, and I was sort of like, oh man, I really want a really big slice of cake right now. But of course I shouldn't. That's gonna make me fat, and that whole like cycle of like, this is what's wrong with me, and why can't I just control myself and willingly, effortlessly have a small piece of cake? And so naturally, when it came time for me, I was like, oh no, just a little bit. And so I asked her to cut like a really small piece for me. And I was proud of myself for having this small piece. But then I noticed throughout the rest of the party that there was like a container of chocolate chip cookies that had like 36 huge cookies in it that hadn't been put out for whatever reason because there was snack food all over the place. And every time I found myself alone in the kitchen, I would grab a cookie and stuff it in my mouth. And then I would, eat it really quickly and leave. And I did this, I would like come through the kitchen throughout this party, and I probably did this about 6 or 7 times where I would just shove a cookie in my mouth really quickly, when nobody was there. And so, this was a situation where was I full to the point where I had to undo my pants and roll around on the ground? No, of course not. But it was this like really compulsive, secret eating that I was doing at this party that I it clicked for me that I was like, this has to do with the cake. If I had just had a regular sized cake and didn't deprive myself in that moment, not only physically, but emotionally, by saying what I should or shouldn't be eating, I likely wouldn't have resorted to all of this secret, making up for it type eating that I was doing the rest of the party. And it was sort of like this moment where I thought, oh my God, this is what is happening. Like I talk about in my book, there was this one New Year's Eve where I just had a binge where I was actually full to the point of felt like I thought I was going to vomit and felt so unhappy and miserable. And of course, the next thing I did when I woke up was I weighed myself, because that's what you do when you're full of self-loathing. You think, well, I'm going to punish myself and I'm going to, snap myself into reality by weighing myself and showing myself what a horrible person I am. So anyway, that was when I first started thinking of this as binge eating and started to really research what it was, and realizing that this behavior, this way in which we guiltily and shamefully approach food in our lives isn't just the result of the fact that we're failures. It's actually a compulsive drive that has a biological and psychological reason, and there's nothing wrong with us. It's just the result of things that we are doing. It's a symptom of other behaviors, and we can very easily eradicate that behavior eradicate that symptom if we start to fix the other behaviors that are going on, primarily deprivation. And there are two types of deprivation that we experience in our lives as dieters. The first one is food deprivation, restriction, dieting, cutting back. And the other one is emotional deprivation, which is probably way more influential in terms of our binge eating and our weight cycling. But first of all, I'll talk about food restriction and food deprivation. A lot of people say, well, I'm not really dieting. I'm just trying to eat well, and I just want to kind of monitor my portions, and I just want to cut back. And, I've been feeling really heavy and just lethargic, and, I really want to just, get healthy. And that's totally fine. But it is still dieting, and it's still deprivation. And the reason why is because you're acting from a place of self-loathing. You're acting from a place of, ugh, I feel ugly, I feel fat, my clothes don't fit me, I feel tired, I have to change. So you're acting from a place of, God, I'm so miserable with who I am right now. If only I could figure out how to do A, B, and C, I'll be a happier person. So you're really sort of going to a point of, you're operating from a point of self-loathing, and you're operating with an MO of should. That term, I'm shoulding all over myself. This idea of who I am now is terrible, and who I want to become is somebody better, and I'm going to do that by losing weight, gaining control, whatever it is, getting back on track, whatever the term is. So that is sort of a way in which we're emotionally depriving ourselves. When we physically deprive ourselves by actually not eating enough food, following calorie restrictions, and following diet trackers, points, whatever it is, when you're not eating enough food, you're actually physically depriving yourself, and then there's a biological reason why your body desires to binge, and that is a big part of the compulsive drive to eat a lot of fatty foods like peanut butter or really sugary things, chocolate, that really these insurmountable cravings that you have, that is really sort of your body telling you, I'm starving. But I think the bigger, more complicated version of deprivation is the emotional deprivation that we are constantly experiencing as chronic dieters, which is, I am unhappy, I am fat, and I need to change. And the way I'm going to change is by, reinventing myself as a new perfect person, and by doing that, and losing weight as well. So, what is that emotional deprivation? I mean, it's really, it's a compulsive behavior, and I think a lot of us as dieters are prone to compulsive behaviors in our lives. For instance, I know a lot of dieters that I came across in Weight Watchers are also compulsive when it comes to money. Really compulsive when it comes to shopping, terrible at balancing budgets, at managing their own money, at keeping track of expenses, and yet all the time feeling like this isn't hard, I should be able to do this, I really need to like get my act together and freaking get my budget together, and like always feeling like I can't control my spending, or, you know, why is this something I'm so bad at? I really should be better at this, and feeling really frustrated with ourselves for having this kind of compulsive behavior. So money is one of those things we have compulsive behavior about. Alcohol is another one, feeling like you may not have the healthiest relationship with alcohol, feeling like in social situations, if everybody else is drinking, you should too. Also feeling like, you know, you have a really hard time just having one glass and not really knowing why, even though, you know, you start out the night saying, I'm just going to have one glass, and next thing you know, you've had three, and kind of why is that happening? Again, it's sort of this compulsive feeling where you're not in control of it, or wish you were in, you know, those two voices that are going on in your head. Exercise is another compulsive behavior where we sort of feel like January 1st is, you know, New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go to the gym 3 times a week, and oh my God, I'm going to be so much better, and I'm going to eat all organic food, and I'm just going to be like the super person, and it works really great for like 3 weeks, and then all of a sudden you just stop, and because obviously it's not sustainable, but like you just stop. You have this kind of all or nothing attitude, and then for the next year, you're just donating money to this gym and not going and thinking like, oh, this is terrible, why do I do this every single year? So you see this common thread, which is like, oh my God, I'm really manic about something, and I'm really gonna be perfect at it, and then followed by, forget it, this all or nothing, and then followed by the shame and frustration and feeling like, oh my God, I'm such a failure, what is wrong with me? Another compulsive behavior is self-help books. If you find that you tend to always read a lot of self-help books thinking that the answer is going to be at the end of each new book, and that you're finally going to figure out what's wrong with you, or, you know, how to be a successful entrepreneur, or how to, you know, have better relations with your family, or like whatever it is that the self-help book is telling you, you know, this belief that somehow you're going to find the answer to all of the things that ail you. That this is going to be the magical cure, is, you know, again, another sort of type of compulsive relationship. So all of these compulsive behaviors have this commonality to them, which is like this perfectionism, this all or nothing attitude. It's another reason why I recommend to my clients Brené Brown all the time, because Brené Brown really hones in on perfectionism and how much perfectionists care about how they are perceived, and there is a private shame and a public persona, and how there's like this duality of how you feel like you should be versus how you are, and who you are is something that you know, are fundamentally disappointed in, and you know, that you just feel like you always want to be somebody else, you always want to be better, and that is, you know, such a perfectionist way of looking at things, and once you sort of make those connections that Brené Brown talks about, you can apply them to so many different avenues in your life, like shopping and money and budgets and compulsive eating. So those are some of the things to think about when you want to know, like, what is binge eating? Am I a binge eater? Because, you know, I talk to a lot of people who think I'm just an emotional eater, or, you know, I fall off the wagon and then I get back on the wagon, and that's just how life is. But I think it's really important to sort of diagnose in yourself a compulsive behavior and take it really seriously, and not think of it in terms of like, oh, well, it's just one more thing I'm a failure at. I think it is a really, really serious symptom of deprivation that we have in our lives, and because it's so shameful and secret, nobody talks about it, and we don't realize how widespread it is and how many people are experiencing this symptom of ways in which they have deprived themselves in life and the ways in which they're restricting themselves. So we don't realize how widespread it is and how common it is. We just think it's our own personal failure. And I just think that's wrong, because I think it's, it can be so freeing to realize once and for all that what is happening to you is merely a byproduct of your desire to be good and heal yourself and be healthy, and that there's nothing wrong with you, that this is it's just a misstep and a misunderstanding in a much, much bigger issue in life. And, that can be extremely difficult when you've spent your life internalizing these ideas that you are a failure, and that this is something you're never going to get your act together. And but it's so not the case, and it just breaks my heart that so many people hide this secret shame and don't talk about it, because it's really the first step to healing, is realizing that it's not something to be shameful of. It's a completely widespread, very normal, and very popular byproduct of dieting. So there you have it. That is my definition. And if you guys have any comments and want to add to it, by all means, let me know. I'm always curious to hear what your experiences are. And like I said, sharing and realizing that you're not the only one going through this is such an amazing way to empower yourself and heal yourself. So I hope you guys have a lovely day, and I will see you later. Okay, bye guys.